Hi everybody, my name is Travis and this is the Daily Travesty. And coming off a couple fun pools of cards after the Arena Open this weekend, what I thought I would do today is play with one of the most popular starter decks on Magic Arena, the Stomp Stomp deck, and see if we can improve this using commons and uncommons from some of the more recent sets. Obviously, if you are opening packs and you get a sweet rare or some sweet mythic rares to put in your deck, by all means throw those in. But what I thought would be most useful is seeing which commons and uncommons people might be able to unlock or already have to throw in this deck to make it better. This deck is pretty strong. I think a lot of people like it, and it's regarded as one of the more powerful starter decks on Magic Arena after you've finished the color challenge completely. You unlock a whole bunch of 2-color decks. And basically the theme of this deck is playing a bunch of creatures that have 4 power or greater. So 4 attack, like the Streamstalker Manticore has 4 attack, 2 defense. This Bone Crusher Giant, which is a sweet card, 4 power, 3 defense. Warden of the Chained, 3 mana 4/4 is really, really good, but it can only attack if you control another creature with 4 power or greater. So anyway, the point of this deck is to play creatures with 4 power or more and just smash into your opponent until they die. Some things I noticed about this deck, it's a little bit light on removal spells. So we have these 2 Scorching Dragonfires, which are great, can kill creatures or planeswalkers. There's the 2 Ram Throughs, which can kill creatures and also trample some damage over. And that's kind of it. I guess Bone Crusher Giant has the Stomp spell, which is sweet, that the deck's named Stomp Stomp. But there's only one of these. Volcanic Salvo, at first glance, I thought this card would be pretty bad, but thinking about how many times I have 2 creatures with 4 power in play, this is a lot of the time a 4 mana card that can kill 2 creatures, and that's pretty sweet. So I think that will stay in. My plan right now is to just play with the deck and show you a match or 2, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to switch out cards from Kaldheim and Strixhaven, maybe some other sets, just commons and uncommons from those more recent sets that I think do a little bit better job than the cards in the starter deck. This Unleash Fury card is awful. I would never play a card like this. Generally, when we play tricks like this, combat tricks, we want to boost our creature's defense as well, not just their attacking power. One thing I noticed about this deck is that there isn't also a ton of ways to give your creatures trample. So it doesn't matter if Rampart Smasher is a 5/5 or a 10/5 creature. If they block, it doesn't deal any additional damage to the player. So Unleash Fury, awful card. One of the first things we're going to get rid of. These Elysian Caratids are also a little weird in the deck. Cards like this are fine, but generally if you're playing a card like this, you want to have really, really expensive spells that you're ramping into. We call it mana ramp, when you are basically cheating the 1 land per turn system by having other things to give you mana. And in this deck, the most expensive cards cost 5. This Terror of the Peaks, amazing card, by the way. Definitely happy to have that in the deck. But most of our cards cost 3 or 4 mana, so I don't really know why these cards are in the deck. I would rather have more removal spells, ways to kill my opponent's creatures, or just some better 2 mana cards. So anyway, we're going to get started. We're going to play some matches. We're going to see how well this deck does, and then we will jump into some deck building with commons and uncommons from Kaldheim, Strixhaven, and maybe some of the other starter decks as well, cards that you have access to. So let's go ahead and play. We'll play ranked. We'll see what kind of decks we come up against in the ranked queue. I do think this deck is set up well to give you opportunities to win as a new player. But there's definitely some changes we can make to it. So let's see how we do. This opening hand is okay. I do have something to play early. I think this Dreamstalker Manticore is actually quite a bad card in this deck especially. So something else we want to get rid of, but we're just going to keep this for now. We can't play Horn Beetle, but generally you're not playing this card on turn 2 anyway. I think Horn Beetle is a better card to play after you already have a creature with 4 power in play, just to make sure you do get at least 1 counter on it. All right, so no lands here. We're just going to play our Rimrock Knight. I really like these adventure cards. They've been out for a couple years, and basically usually they give you a creature that has a spell built into them. You do have to cast the other spell first, so we kind of miss out on the Boulder Rush here, but we don't really have anything else to play, so there's no point in me waiting to play another creature, to then play Boulder Rush, to then play Rimrock Knight, especially if I don't have anything in play here. I'm just going to attack, and I am going to use this awful Unleash Fury because the opponent isn't blocking. I think cards like Unleash Fury are a bit of a trap for new players because you look at this and you're like, oh, double power, that sounds really powerful. And in situations like this, it's like, well, I just dealt 6 damage to the opponent. That was great. Until you realize that Magic isn't actually at its heart about dealing damage to the opponent. Like, yes, that is the way that you win games, but Magic is a game about resources more than anything. And doubling the power of your creature, it basically does nothing. It doesn't help us kill the opponent's creatures as much because, like, even if this is a 6/1, they can block it with any creature and it's going to die. So we're now going to spend 2 cards to get rid of 1 card of the opponent's. That sounds bad, right? We use 2 cards to kill one of theirs. So our opponent playing a very powerful deck. I think this is the Sultai Ultimatum deck, which is has a lot more rares and is I think in general much more powerful than our deck. It also doesn't help that we only drew 2 lands, but I mean they are at 9, and if they don't play anything else, there is a chance that we could get them here. So I'm going to start with Warden of the Chained because of its high defense compared to like a Dreamstalker Manticore or the Bone Crusher Giant. It is possible that our opponent just kills everything we play and then we can never play anything ever again, but that's going to happen sometimes in Magic. We're also a little bit delayed in playing our lands, so possible that we lose on the spot. If you have to pick between cards in Magic to play, it's better to play the most expensive thing if there's no other reason to switch between them. So this costs 3 mana, this costs 3 mana, this costs 4. It also happens to be the best creature we have because it has 5 power, 5 defense compared to this creature, which is a 4/3, and the Dreamstalker Manticore, which is also a 4/2. Yeah, this card I think is really bad in the Stomp Stomp deck. It does have 4 power, so I understand why it's here. But dealing an extra damage to any target when you play an instant on your opponent's turn doesn't come up that much in this deck. We're mostly playing creatures on our turn. Very rarely are we playing instants, so I don't think this actually matters all that much. There's a 3 mana 4/2 in the basic green deck that has Trample, which would be way better than this because we could trample over for a bit extra damage. Oh, our opponent not doing the math correctly there and flunking their math test, trying to kill Rampart Smasher. At this point, I think I play both Horn Beetles. Again, you want to maximize how much mana you can use every turn, and although a single 3 mana 4/3 is more powerful than any Horn Beetle, if I could play multiple things in the same turn, that's good. Now, normally I suggest you play your spells after combat, but because the Horn Beetles actually get a counter when you enter combat, I'm going to play those first. Hopefully they get pumped up into 3/3s, and we'll attack the opponent for 5 damage here. Again, I think the opponent's deck is more powerful than ours, but sometimes just smashing your opponent with creatures does work. That is sort of the point of having a lot of creatures in play, is sometimes you can just get them by attacking. So, okay, well, we get a little bit ruined by Extinction Event here. This is a powerful card. It hit the 2 and 4 drops. Our opponent doing the math correctly here and picking even. I've definitely screwed that up before. Again, another awful Unleash Fury. I'm just going to play the card that the opponent knows about. This card also deals damage to them if they try and target it with a removal spell, and I mean, the faster we can deal damage to them here, the less likely they're going to get to play the 7 cards they have in their hand. Again, I don't think this is a game we're winning necessarily, but you never know. Okay, well, the opponent's going to take 2 damage here. Oh, actually, no, they don't. Huh. This only deals damage if it becomes the target of a spell, and this is technically an enchantment when it's in play. So that's pretty good. We're just going to play Manticore. Our plan here is to have them not kill Manticore, and then next turn Unleash Fury on Manticore, deal 8 to them, and then on their turn, maybe deal some damage to them. But they're going to get their binding back, so... Sometimes you're going to come up against decks that are a lot more powerful than yours, and that's fine. I mean, that's going to happen in Magic. I just hope that you play enough games against equally powered decks that you have fun. Maybe that's one of the that's one of the reasons not to play in the ranked queues, is that in general you are going to have mismatched of decks. Well, this card does absolutely nothing. This might also be a card that has to come out of the deck. 5 mana, do nothing, because we don't have a creature in play, isn't exactly where I want to be. This card does nothing right now. So you can already see why some of these cards are a problem. When you're just starting out in Magic and you're trying to decide which cards are bad in your deck, these are the situations you want to analyze. If you have nothing in play and you have enough mana to play your cards, do they help you? This is not helping us do anything right now. We can't draw cards. We're not attacking with it. That's pretty bad. This card does nothing in our hand as well. Scorching Dragonfire is a good card. Obviously, the creatures our opponents are playing are bigger than our removal spell can take care of, but I mean, there are targets for this card, so... Okay, well, we're going to play out Leafkin Avenger. Again, it's just a card in the deck. I don't know if this card is particularly good. I think it is probably one of the cards I would keep in the deck, because if your game goes really long and you have nothing to do, eventually you can tap 8 mana and start dealing damage to the opponent, which is a fine ability. I don't think this is like a super great card, but it is not the worst card in the Stomp Stomp deck. So we'll probably just keep that one in during deck building. If there was something that was much better than this in the 4 mana spot, then I would suggest it, but... okay, well, I think we kind of get ruined by any of these cards. We have to choose one card for them to not get, and I don't really want them to have Tybalt, the back half of Tybalt, so we'll get rid of that. They can have a Planeswalker in Professor Onyx, and they can draw 8 cards, or 4 cards. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, this card, or this deck is obviously much more powerful than ours. Oh, we have to discard again? Oh yeah, okay. So we just lose the game. Yeah, we just lose the game here. But that's totally fine. The point, okay, we get it, opponent. You win. The point of this game wasn't to beat the Ultimatum deck. It was to show why some of the cards in this Stomp Stomp deck don't perform really well. I was actually planning on playing a couple matches, but we saw a few of the cards that I wanted to talk about anyway. So because we already saw them, let's go ahead and edit those out. So I'm going to make a copy of this deck and we can edit it. So cards that we played with that did not help us and seemed really bad were Unleash Fury. So we're going to take these cards out of the deck. Other cards that we saw that didn't really help us. I don't think Dreamstalker Manticore is particularly good. If you manage to have other Bone Crusher Giants, that's awesome. You can just exchange these 1 for 1, take out a Manticore, put in a Bone Crusher Giant. This card is way better. I don't know if it's necessarily worth your time to spend wild cards on Bone Crusher Giant. It depends how much you play. But this card you won't be able to use it in standard as of September, which is still a ways away. So maybe it is worth spending wild cards on. It is way better than Dreamstalker Manticore, but we want to get rid of those. Avenger, again, is fine. I think there's probably better cards, but we'll just leave it in the deck for now. There's only so much you can do with commons and uncommons. Return of the Wild Speaker is also bad. So let's see if we can switch these out with a common or uncommon from some of the more recent sets to just immediately improve our deck without having to spend too much. When you first get into deck building and you're taking cards out, I suggest you put in a card that has a similar mana cost and is similar in ability. So this is a 2 mana instant that makes a creature bigger or makes their power bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at 2 mana instants that make my creatures bigger. And I know that there is one already that I have my eye on from Kaldheim. And the card is Run Amok. So this is a common. You might already have some of these lying around. This card essentially has the same intent as the awful Unleash Fury. The only difference, actually there's 2 differences and they're huge. One, this pumps up your creature's defensive power. So if they block and you play this card, your creature is more likely to survive that exchange. So you'll keep resources in play, which is really good in Magic. The other thing that this card does is it gives your card trample. So again, if we attack with, say, a Rampart Smasher, a 5/5, and they block and we pump up its power for some reason, and it becomes a 10/5, they can still just block with like a 1/1 creature and take no damage. What you want from your gigantic creatures is for them to be able to trample through, so that if your opponent blocks with a really tiny creature, you can still deal damage to the opponent directly. So Run Amok is my suggestion for a 1-for-1 trade with Unleash Fury. And you can pick up Run Amok as a common wild card from Kaldheim. So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to take these 3 Unleashes out. I'll throw them in the sideboard. Although I don't expect to ever play these. Go away. 2, 3. And I'm going to add 3 Run Amoks to my deck. And I think that's going to instantly improve the strength of the deck. Next thing I want to take out is Dreamstalker Manticore. Again, this is a 3 mana creature. So I'm going to look for 3 mana creatures to put back into the deck. Now, apart from being just a 3 mana creature, this card also has 4 power, which is really important in this deck. You do want creatures that have 4 power. And there are a couple we could look at. Again, I picked cards that are in standard. This Frenzied Raptor is obviously worse because it's 3 mana 4/2 with no other abilities. Same as this Nake Ogre, 3 mana 4/2, no other abilities. So it's obviously worse than the Dreamstalker Manticore. If we dip into green, we see a Not Bold Recluse. Again, 3 mana 4/2. This creature has reach. So if you're playing against decks that have a lot of flying creatures and you notice you're losing to them a lot, maybe Not Bold Recluse is a good exchange for Dreamstalker Manticore. Again, I'm not saying this card is awful. It's just we don't really get a ton of value from the effect that when you cast a spell on your opponent's turn, you deal damage to something. I think in general, Manticore is probably better than Recluse, but this deck might have a problem dealing with flyers, so that is a consideration to switch one of these in. Or if you're playing best of 3, you can put these in your sideboard and maybe switch them in and out. Or if you are playing direct challenge against a friend that uses a lot of flying, you might want to put those in your deck. Again, we're looking for 4 power creatures. All right, Loathsome Chimera is actually a really nice one. This is from the Theros set. 3 mana 4/1. But when you're playing 3 mana cards, the difference between 1 toughness and 2 toughness isn't that much. But Loathsome Chimera has a really nice ability that if it dies later in the game, you can actually bring it back into play. It costs 5 mana, and you have to have 3 other cards in your graveyard to get rid of. But then you get another creature out of it. And for a deck that's trying to play as many creatures as possible to attack with, Loathsome Chimera is actually a really nice common to pick up in exchange for Dreamstalker Manticore. Again, I think this card is fine in the right deck, but in this deck, we aren't playing a ton of spells on our opponent's turn. So I would say Loathsome Chimera is a nice option if you want to give your deck more power and more resources to use. Let's see what else we have before we lock in the Loathsome Chimera. Again, we do want creatures with 4 power because of the theme of the deck. Well, if you end up getting another Warden of the Chained, I would just throw another one of these in the deck. It has Trample, which is great in this deck. It can't attack unless you control another creature with 4 power. But again, that's the whole theme of the deck. So I think adding one of these would be awesome. If you have an uncommon wild card, you could just grab another one of those. Obviously, there's 3 in the deck already, and we do really like that card. Other cards that we can add with 4 power. I'm not really seeing anything else. So that's probably my best suggestion is to, if you have an uncommon wild card, add a Warden of the Chained and take out a Dreamstalker Manticore. If you only have commons, do the Loathsome Chimeras. So I'm going to assume that we only have commons. I'm going to add 2 Loathsome Chimera, and I'm going to take out 2 Dreamstalker Manticore. There is some consideration to give that we're taking out a red card and putting in a green card, but in this red and green deck, for right now, I think it's okay. The last card that we wanted to get rid of was Return the Wild Speaker. Return of the Wild Speaker. This effect looks really powerful, and in fact, drawing a bunch of cards seems great, but that's kind of a win more card. This is a concept that comes up a lot in Magic. Oh, sorry, I don't know if you guys can see that. My face is probably in the way. Let's throw it over here. This is what's called a win more card, where it sounds super great and super powerful, but in order for you to get the benefit of it, you're probably already winning the game. So we don't really need a card that helps us win the game more. What we would like is a card that helps us if we're losing or if we're equal with our opponent and we're trying to gain the advantage. Drawing cards equal to the greatest power of a creature we have, awesome. I mean, we're going to draw 4 cards a lot of the time. 5 mana draw 4 is great. But remember that last game where we had no creatures in play, we had 5 mana and we couldn't play this. That was awful. The second ability on it, creatures you control get +3/+3 till end of turn. That sounds awesome, but most of the time, our creatures are going to be so big anyway. Adding +3/+3 without adding trample doesn't do anything. Again, turning a 5/5 into an 8/8 doesn't deal more damage to your opponent if they block. So I think this card is quite weak. Let's see if there's another 5 mana non-creature spell we could add to this deck. Again, commons and uncommons from standard. And I say non-creature spell because maybe a sorcery or an instant or an enchantment or an artifact can actually help us do this. So let's take a look and see if there is something. Again, the point of this is to draw cards or maybe attack with bigger creatures. And I don't think I really see anything like that here. You know, Nylea's Forerunner could actually be a card we play in this deck. Giving all of our other creatures trample could actually be great. If we have a whole bunch of 4/4s in play and then we drop this on turn 5 and give them all trample, that kind of achieves the same effect as like pumping the team. So that might actually be a decent card to put in this deck. This is a common in Theros. I actually think that I would put this card in this deck. Other things to consider would be like a Searing Barrage from Throne of Eldraine, or a Pigment Storm from Strixhaven, just a way to kill a creature. Again, these don't draw us cards, but I don't know if that's an effect that our deck necessarily needs. So maybe I would just put in one of these more powerful removal spells. Searing Barrage can also deal damage directly to your opponent if you have 3 red mana available. Pigment Storm deals damage to your opponent, kind of like Trample. I think what I'm going to do right now is take out Return of the Wild Speaker and put in a Nylea's Forerunner. I don't want too many cards like this. 3 toughness isn't great on a 5-drop, but if I have a couple creatures in play already when I play this, I can win the game on the spot. This card can also trample on its own. So maybe that's a 5-mana card I put in. And that's where we're going to start for now. There are a couple other cards I want to take out. I want to take this Carotid out. I want to take this Brushwag out as well. I don't think this card does enough in the deck. But we haven't really seen them play out. So let's go ahead and play. Let's see if Run-Amok does a better job for us. And let's see if these Loathsome Chimeras can put some work in as well. So we'll go back. We'll play another match. Probably end up playing like 3 or 4 matches total today. Again, just trying to see if we can improve this deck using commons and uncommons. This hand looks fine. It's a little bit slow. I would like a 2-mana card to play, but I have 3 lands and 2 3-mana cards. This puts a trample counter on a creature, which is really, really sweet. And a 3-mana 3/3 is fine in its own right. I'm not going to start with this. Obviously, I would rather have a creature in play when I play this. So I'll probably start with the Chimera. This opponent also playing some kind of Urian deck. Again, no 2-mana card to play, so I'll play this Scryland. I don't think the 1/1 is really going to help us because we have much more powerful cards already. Temple of Abandon, good card. If you have more of these, you could just put them in this deck, take out a forest or a mountain, it's totally fine. So let's go ahead and play our Loathsome Chimera. Opponent deciding if they want to maybe counter this spell. I don't actually know what deck we're playing against here. Oh, Omen of the Sea is fine. A black-blue deck. I don't play a ton of Constructed. I tend to draft a lot more, which anyone who's watched or seen the videos I post knows. I really, really love drafting. So that's usually where I put my time. But I do play a little bit of Constructed. I did hit Mythic last month, so I will be playing in the Constructed Mythic qualifier this weekend. Well, I think we just attack with our 4/4, or 4/1 rather, and see what the opponent does here. 4 to them, and then we're going to play our Rampart Smasher. There's also an option there to play a Brushwag and a Hornbash Mentor, but putting the trample counter on a 4/1 doesn't really appeal to me. Okay, well, opponent countering our spell. Maybe that's a reason to play the Hornbash Mentor instead. Okay, so 2/2, that when it dies, they get to draw a card. All right, so this is the perfect example of what I was talking about. If we were to attack this into this creature, they would both kill each other. And if we had that other red card that was bad that I talked about, this could be an 8/1 and they would still both kill each other. But now our creature is going to be a 7/4 with trample. We're going to deal some damage to the opponent. That's going to be really, really good for us if we wanted to play Run Amok this turn. I think we probably just play this other creature this turn. Again, trying to build up resources in play. I don't really need to make this desperate attack. I don't really want them drawing an extra card right away. and I know that on a later turn, I can attack with Loathsome Chimera, play Run Amok, and maybe save my Chimera. Chimera. We also have a ram through that would let us kill the Simulacrum without having to engage it in combat. The opponent has a Crawling Barrens here. Just something to be aware of when you're playing against decks online. Sometimes it is good to look at what lands they have. Not everyone's just playing basic forests and mountains. This land can actually become a creature, so that's something worth noting. Ooh, Terror of the Peaks is our best card in the deck. I'm a little bit worried against playing against a blue deck that they might just counter whatever spell we play. So I think rather than playing into a counter spell necessarily, I'm going to play this Hornbash Mentor. I'm going to put the trample counter on our 4/3 and see if we can deal some damage to the opponent. I mean, if they counter this card, that's fine. It's annoying, but if it's something similar to last time where they had this card where we had to pay an extra 1, it's fine. Okay, so they are going to counter our spell. I'm okay with that. We're still just going to attack with our 4/3. The 2/2 doesn't kill it. Our opponent does get to draw an extra card here, but we're going to have 2 creatures in play, and they're not going to have any. And that means that maybe next turn we can attack them for a bunch of damage. And we'll play out this 1/1 because we can. Not that it's particularly powerful. I don't think this card is super great in this deck. I don't usually want to spend my mana to pump up this creature. It can certainly win you a game and be powerful, but I expect more out of my 1 mana creatures than what this is offering. It does have trample, which is nice, but now that we've put Run Amok in, we can just give our creatures trample anyway. So, opponent going to scry 2, then draw, and then probably play their 4/5 flyer that lets them replay both of these omens. And now they're going to scry 2, draw, scry 2, draw. So Magic is a very complicated game. I can see why new players might be overwhelmed with all the different cards and options. And I think that's why doing the color challenge after the tutorial is really good, because they slowly introduce you to more complicated strategies and cards without you having to be thrown into the ranked queues where you have like these crazy 80 card decks with multiple enchantments and all this kind of stuff. Okay, well, it is good to note that this can tap for an extra 2 mana, so we technically have 6 mana in play. I do like the idea of playing Terror of the Peaks while my opponent doesn't have any mana up to play a counter spell. I also want this card to die, so maybe what I'm supposed to do is attack with the Avenger, and if my opponent blocks, I can play Run Amok. And then if they don't block, I still have mana to do my other spells. I don't really want to run the Chimera into the 4/5 because they'll both die even if I do play Run Amok. And I don't think that's worth my resources. All right. Well, here we get to see the power of Run Amok. Kill their creature, deal damage to them. So Run Amok already showing to be a very powerful card in this deck. Okay, well, Ugin is also a very powerful card. And they are likely to just clear the entire board here. But hey, that's going to happen. I mean, you're going to come up against Ugin. Ugin isn't able to kill Terror of the Peaks next turn, and they did tap out for it, so I'm going to play Terror of the Peaks. And maybe we can just attack Ugin for 5 damage with our Terror of the Peaks. Again, like I was saying, it can be a little bit intimidating to get thrown into the ranked queues against these very powerful decks, but... Oh, and Ashiok. Yeah, so it's going to be very tough for us to win. That is a little bit disheartening, and like I said, maybe that's a reason to play the color challenge as a new player. Maybe that's a reason to not play ranked until you get more comfortable with the game and comfortable with the idea that you're probably going to come up against some really powerful opponents. I mean, our opponent played Ugin and Ashiok. There's not going to be that much we can do to win this game. Yeah, this is a very low impact card. I'm not very happy to see this one. So to save your time and mine, I'm just going to concede here. Normally I don't concede matches. I just play them out. If my opponent's going to win that quickly anyway, I just let them beat me. But in this case, I want to play more matches so that you can see this deck in action. So maybe we will not jump into the ranked queue on this one. I feel like, why are all these people playing these powerful decks in silver? I am in silver in constructed because I never play constructed. I only ever draft. So why are we seeing all these decks? I feel like that's not fun. Maybe they're ranking or pairing us based on how long I've been playing. I don't know. Seems unfun to me. But anyway, what are some other things we can do in this deck? Well, I think this deck needs more ways to kill our opponent's creatures. Like I said before, I don't think this Caryatid is doing that much in this deck. Having a little bit of extra mana doesn't really help us all that much. So I'm actually going to take all three of these cards out. And I don't think we need the mana ramp. So this is where I'm actually going to break my suggestion from before. I am going to instead add a removal spell. There's a really nice one in Kaldheim I'm thinking of that you might also choose to put in your deck. It is the 3-mana Demon Bolt. I mean, Royal Eruption would be totally fine as well from Zendikar. 2 mana, deal 3 damage to any target as a sorcery. If you pay 7 mana to cast it, you deal 5 damage instead. This would be a totally great card to put in. It only costs 2 mana, so maybe that is something that would be a perfect card to put in this deck. You can also put more Scorching Dragonfires in this deck. If you find that you're playing a lot of decks that the 3 damage isn't enough to kill something, you might choose to put more in. These Rimrock Knights, we already have 2 of them. I think these would be totally fine to put in this deck too, instead of the Caryatid. Where is the Demon Bolt? There it is. So I'm just going to put these in the deck. I think having ways to kill creatures or planeswalkers is important. Even in that last matchup, it would have been nice to have a way to kill the Ugin. And if we have nothing to do on turn 2, we can use the Foretell feature on these to put them face down and then cast them for cheap later. So I'm going to switch out the Caryatids for the Demon Bolts. Again, these are commons you can get in Kaldheim. And I think this deck doesn't have enough ways to kill the opponent's creatures, so happy to put that in. I'm not really excited about the Almighty Brushwag in this deck, so I'm going to look for 1 and 2 mana creatures to put in. Again, at the common and uncommon slot, just so I can cater to the widest audience. But I think if you have a sweet rare, you definitely put it in your deck. Cards that I would be excited to throw in this deck. Instead of the 1 mana Brushwag. Again, I think the Rimrock Knights are probably better. Even these Chainweb Arachnoseers I think are pretty good. They can block some flyers and kill some flyers later on. That's something that you could put in instead of the 1 mana 1/1 Brushwag. Even something like a Tajuru Blightblade from Zendikar, or the Moss Viper from Theros. Either of those I think is maybe a bit better than those. Although this deck does want to attack with a lot of power, so maybe those aren't great. Finn the Fang Bear again is fine, but it doesn't have enough power. I think if you want to put a couple more Nessian Horn Beetles in the deck, that's totally fine. That is sort of the theme of the deck, is the 4 power thing, and these cards can get out of hand quick. So that's something I would definitely consider putting in as an uncommon. Maybe the Skurrid Colony from Strixhaven. I think this card is better than the Brushwag. If the game goes really long, it's going to be a 4/4, but more importantly than that, it has reach. So if your opponent is going to attack you with flyers, this can go in. Ooh, Gnarly Colony. So this is actually the card I'm going to put in. You can play this on turn 2 as a 2/2, totally fine. But later in the game, you can actually pay 5 mana to play it, and it'll be a 4/4 with Trample. And every other creature that has a +1/+1 counter has Trample. So this card actually synergizes really well with the Horn Beetles, because if you have both of them in play, they both get Trample. I think that is actually the card I'm going to put in this deck. That seems like it'll have the most impact. So 3 of those go in the deck. Take out these Brushwags. And again, the idea here is that we can play these on turn 2, or we can play them on turn 5. And because of that, I think maybe this Forerunner isn't something I want necessarily. We have 24 creatures. That's a decent amount. Maybe the Forerunner comes out. Maybe there's something better we could put in the deck. And so maybe we look at creatures that cost 4, 5, or 6 or 7 mana. That would be better than the Forerunner. Something really big to play later in the game that's going to have a big impact on the game. I don't think this Strix is going in this deck. I don't think this Sage, 4 mana or 5 mana 4/4 reach isn't really what we're after. Keeper the Fables could be really good, actually. So this is an uncommon from Throne of Eldraine. And remember, the card we initially took out of the deck was something that drew us cards. Because we're adding so much trample to the deck, maybe we want to play Keeper the Fables. It has 4 power, and whenever our trample creatures deal damage to the opponent, we get to draw a card. That seems really good to me. That's probably better than the Forerunner in this case. So that's an uncommon. Again, this is going to rotate out in September, but still a long time till that happens. So I think this is probably a good card to put in. Even something like this Fierce Band Brawler would be fine. It is expensive with 6 mana, but when it comes into play, it kills an opponent's creature. So that might be something you want to put in the deck as well. This is a Theros uncommon. So let's go ahead with that. Oh, Beanstalk Giant, totally fine as well. Doesn't have Trample though. I think this Keeper the Fables is actually going to be pretty good. So we'll throw that in there. And let's play a couple more matches. I am going to keep playing in the ranked queue, although I'm a little bit discouraged with how many high-powered decks I'm seeing. But sometimes that just happens, right? All right, we have 3 mana and a couple spells to play. Totally happy to keep this hand. Again, we have our Gnarlid Colony, which we might play on turn 2. But if we have to keep this till turn 5, that's also fine with us. And here's a Demon Bolt. Very happy to see that in case our opponent plays a creature we want to kill early. Well, I would like to play the Warden of the Chained next turn. Yeah. Our opponent putting a card away. Do you think maybe it's a Demon Bolt? And they're just going to kill whatever we play. Maybe we save our cards and just play the Demon Bolt here. Again, we're using the Foretell feature, which means that we can put it off to the side, kind of like our opponent did. And then on a later turn, we can pay 1 mana for this. All right, well, opponent deciding to get a little bit more aggressive, playing a 4-3. That's totally fine with us. I'm just going to play out our 4-4. I'm not going to block with this. If they want to deal 4 damage to me, that's fine. If they want to play their Demon Bolt here, if that is what they have foretold, that's also fine. They're going to kill whatever we play anyway. But I definitely want to play Rampart Smasher next turn. Ooh, Calamity Bearer is a nice one for them and a nice target for our Demon Bolt. This thing is going to deal 8 damage, so I think I would rather just trade off here. I don't want to take 8 damage. And we have the Demon Bolt to kill their Calamity Bearer. And I think I will actually do that right now. This card is great. If you get one of these from Kaldheim, maybe it's not so good in our deck necessarily. It really only makes Rampart Smasher better, but I do think this Tribal Giants deck is really good. We don't get to gain our 1 life off Rugged Highlands because of Quakebringer. That's sad. We do want to start attacking. So I'm going to play the Rampart Smasher. I'm going to attack with the Warden. I don't think my opponent's going to block, but we'll see. And if they do block, we get to gain our life. If they don't block, we'll still play our land. We don't really care that much about the 1 life. Maybe the opponent has a spell to pump theirs up. Okay, wow. That was kind of an interesting trade. I'm a bit surprised. I mean, the opponent, if they play a giant, we start taking 2 damage every turn, but... Okay, second Quakebringer. Yeah, that's fine. I don't know if that was like a play I would have made, but... Well, let's keep attacking. I don't know if the opponent's going to block this time. If they do block, we play Run Amok. If they don't block, we can now play a 4-4 Colony. And you can really see the value of the Colony here. That we didn't play it on turn 2, and we waited till we had a few more lands, and we could play it as a 4-4. If I had nothing else to do on turn 2, I definitely would have played it. But because I had other things to do, this card got way better than it was at the beginning. Really hoping to draw another one of our Demon Bolts to kill the Quakebringer. Ooh, Hornbash Mentor also nice with the Gnarlid Colonies. Putting extra counters on things. Well, let's go ahead and attack. I'm happy to attack with both creatures here. I mean, the opponent maybe won't suspect a trick because either of them trades. In this case, I think I do just want to play Gnarlid Colony again. Get as much beef in play as I can. So we'll play another Gnarlid Colony. This card is excellent. I would definitely think about putting this in your Stomp Stomp deck. Just the fact that it's a 4-power creature with trample, or a 2-mana 2-2 when you really need a 2-mana 2-2, I think that's super powerful. Okay, Crystalline Giant. That card is very good. Let's see what they get here. Menace. Yeah, Menace. We don't really care about Menace. We are on the attack. This turn, I want to play Boulder Rush, the instant from Rimrock Knight. I want to play Run Amok, and I want to play Scorching Dragonfire. And I want to deal a ton of damage to my opponent. Boulder Rush also a lot better if our creature has trample. Awesome. Well, this deck came together pretty nicely, actually. I like some of the additions we made. Obviously, that was a very small sample of what the deck could do or what it could come up against. That was one deck. They had a bunch of creatures, and our deck is really well suited for that. We are going to do a couple more matches. I just want to run this deck, and I want anyone that's curious to be able to see how the deck plays. If there's any other decks you guys would like to see me run through or maybe suggest some changes you could make from various commons and uncommons, let me know. I do really enjoy making the content for newer players. I think there is a lot of content out there for very experienced players and people that are trying to play at higher levels of competition. But there isn't a ton of great content for players that are pretty new to the game. So that's what I'm trying to cater to. We're going to play the Horn Beetle because we don't have anything else to do on turn 2. And if we play Horn Beetle on turn 2, Chimera on turn 3, that actually makes the Horn Beetle a 3/3 right away. Our opponent playing some kind of 3-color Urian deck. There's a lot of these Urian decks. Okay, well, we kind of got wrecked by Elspeth's Nightmare. That's okay. They are going to get a non-creature, non-land a card from our hand. They're going to be sorely disappointed because we only have creatures. So at least we didn't get the extra value there. Next turn, we're going to play Leafkin Avenger. Again, just playing the... Oh, well, maybe we're supposed to play Rampart Smasher. Just playing the most expensive spells we can that are the most powerful. Ooh, Archon of Sun's Grace is a card I would really like to kill. I'm going to play my Mountain. I'm going to attack them. I'm totally fine if these two creatures trade. Theirs is much better than ours. Even if they end up exiling it from our graveyard. Remember, this is a card that could come back from the graveyard, but... Alright, well, let's play Rampart Smasher. Archon of Sun's Grace is kind of scary because they can make a bunch of 2/2s with it that all gain life. And this card itself gains life when it attacks, so... Or when it deals damage to something. So, something a little bit scary. Nothing a Demon Bolt couldn't fix, so I am glad we put Demon Bolts in our deck. And that's sort of how you start looking at metagaming and what the metagame is. If you find that you come up against a lot of creatures with 4 toughness, maybe you take Scorching Dragonfire out of your deck and you put in a card that can deal 4 damage, like a Demon Bolt. We don't have any other lands, so we'll play our Rugged Highland. The opponent has something up. We're just going to keep smashing them and see if we can get them dead here. Omen of the Sea. Yeah, totally fine. It's a little weird for the opponent to play that there. I guess they're going to make a 2/2. I was kind of scared that they had a counter spell, but because they played this and now they have no mana untapped, I'm going to be totally fine playing all my spells. Let's see if they block here. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, we can just play Run Amok. Again, Run Amok doing much better work than that previous card we had. Because now our creature doesn't die, and we trample through for damage. I don't think it's necessarily worth me playing the Gnarlid Colony here. I would rather just hold up my damage spell, and then next turn play Gnarlid Colony as a 4/4. I don't think playing a random 2/2 in this game is going to matter, especially because they can make 2/2s by playing enchantments with their Archon. See what the opponent does here. They could play Urian and then get the extra Omen of the Sea trigger. Scry 2, draw 1. Oh, Doom Foretold. That card is really annoying. Does it sacrifice a non-land permanent? Non-land, non-token permanent. Well, we'll definitely be sacrificing Loathsome Chimera. Because I know I want to attack next turn, I'm just going to play this Scorching Dragonfire now. I want my Rampart Smasher to get in for as much damage as it can. We will sacrifice the Chimera because it's weaker, and it's a card we can replay from our graveyard. Now I can attack. Kind of a tough game. In general, you want to spend as much mana as you can, but this card is going to make us sacrifice a creature every turn, so I think I just want to play 2 creatures now. I'm going to put the counter on the Rampart Smasher. I'm going to play the Gnarlid Colony as a 2/2. And then this is something that we can sacrifice to Doom Foretold. Now our opponent has an interesting choice. Oh, double Doom Foretold. That's kind of sad. So we have to sacrifice 2 creatures. Again, I feel for new players because Magic is a very complicated game, especially with all these cards available. So if you're coming into Magic, you're getting a little bit frustrated again, maybe try sticking to the color challenge. Yeah. So again, I don't think we are able to win this game. Well, I mean, they do have to sacrifice these next turn. Maybe we just pass the turn here. I feel like we're probably not going to win. But they did have to sacrifice both Doom Foretolds there. If we draw a Demon Bolt, that could be good for us. Play the most expensive thing we have. Get rid of 3 cards. In some decks, it matters which cards you get rid of from your graveyard to exile, but in our deck, it doesn't really matter. Now, this is a 5/2. It does just trade with the Flyers, but... Well, here's our Demon Bolt. Still going to be really tough for us to win. We would have to draw another removal spell for their 2/2. But we're going to try our best. And you never know. I mean, if we draw a bunch of removal spells and the opponent doesn't have anything, it could be good for us. Okay, well, now we've lost. I do think the deck is operating much better than before. All right, well, we're going to stop there for today. Basically, what we did was we took the Stomp Stomp deck that is a starter deck you get on Magic Arena after you finish Color Challenge, and we added a couple cards to it that do a better job of what those cards were trying to do than the initial ones. We took out these awful Unleash Fury cards, and we added 1-for-1 Run Amok from Kaldheim, which is just way, way better. It is a common, easy to pick up these. We also took out these Caryatids, which are fine, but they don't really fit the theme of this deck. We're not really trying to ramp into a whole bunch of mana. So we took those out and we added the Gnarlid Colonies, which can be a good card to play on turn 2. But if you draw them later in the game, you can pay 5 mana and you get a powerful creature. So really happy with that switch. We took out the 2 Dreamstalker Manticores. These cards are fine, but we found cards that we liked a bit better. The Loathsome Chimera, 4/2 and a 4/1 in this deck, kind of the same thing. And These ones can come back from the graveyard if the game goes a little bit longer, so that's really nice. We also took out a few other cards to add the Demon Bolts. Just having more ways to kill our opponent's creatures, I think, is really valuable. Again, this is a comment from Kaldheim. And we added the Keeper of the Fables. Now that we have a whole bunch of creatures that have trample and have the ability to deal damage to the opponent, drawing cards off of this card, which is also a creature in its own right, is, I think, going to be pretty powerful. Here's the Stomp Stomp deck. This has been the Daily Travesty. Thanks so much for watching, and I wish you guys well in all your matches.